Attention, attention, all personnel. Incoming podcast. This is MASH Matters.
Hey!
Hey, ho!
Hey!
Hot spit.
We're back!
Look at us, we're back.
How are you, Jeff?
I'm okay. How are you, Ryan? We all want to know how you are.
Everything's fine. Everything will be fine.
Great. I'm great. I found out I have a cataract.
Oh, congratulations.
I thought it was cataract, but cataract is something you use to hold your cat. So this is with a T, cataract. And I didn't know that. I was saying to the doctor, I have a cataract. And you put a T on there. You Cataract. So I have one, and that's my big deal. That's my big news, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, congratulations. I'm very happy for you and your new cataract.
Thank you very much. Well, this is I'm a little nervous. I kind of don't remember exactly how to do this.
You know, it's kind of like riding a bike.
Yeah.
Except that when I was a kid, I got into a lot of bike accidents. So that may not be the best analogy. But hey, we're going to just push forward and welcome everybody back to MASH Matters, the podcast celebrating the greatest television series of all time. I am Ryan Patrick alongside my friend, Mr. Jeff Maxwell. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, Ryan. This is and indeed, thank you for everybody staying around. We thank you for your support, and we hope we provide some sort of interesting entertainment over the next 10 years.
So when we went on our hiatus, we said that we would return with our season 8 recap, and we have kept our promise, where we are going to go through the entire season and discuss the episodes and read your comments. Boy, you sent a lot of comments.
Yeah.
So many words.
Oh, yes. There are a lot of words that people wrote to us.
Yes. And we're going to read a small percentage of all the words that were sent to us. And that's still a lot. But we are always thankful for everybody's feedback. If you want to email us, you can send an email to mashmatterspodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram and X or Twitter or whatever Elon is calling it now.
Are we on the new one? There's some new one, a blue sky? Yeah, blue sky.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up because I've been thinking about that. Do we want to start a blue sky account? Mm-hmm. I just signed up for my very own personal blue sky account.
I see. Okay.
So far, I kind of like it. I just haven't had as much time to explore it. But if listeners would like us to join the blue sky community, then by golly, I guess we'll do that as well.
Sure. Anything the listeners would like us to do, we're here for you.
As long as there's a check included with the request.
And it doesn't include lawn work. I don't do lawn work.
Yeah. I don't do windows.
I'll do windows. I will.
All right.
But I'm not doing anything with leaves.
No.
I don't like leaves.
I think we should just jump right in here, Jeff. We had a few people who just commented on the season as a whole. Mm-hmm. And I like the dichotomy because you have Matthew here who says, in my opinion, this is the best season in the series, which is saying a lot. And that's followed up by Alan, who says, they start getting kind of bad at this point. Honesty.
Yeah, that's interesting, Alan. What the heck?
To each his own.
To each his own.
Alan may not be listening right now.
Yeah. And Kenneth says, a side note, season 8 would be the final season to have the standard 24 plus episodes. Seasons 9 through 11 had less than 24 episodes. Thank you, Kenneth, for letting us know that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Rick says, gentlemen, welcome back from R&R. I hope you're in better shape than Radar when he returned, or Klinger, or Roy, or any of a number of them. Seriously, it's a thrill to have you back. Ryan, you've been in my prayers. Well, thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. It's your friendly neighborhood stat guy again. When you did the viewer-selected top 50 episodes, 5 episodes from season 8 were on it. Here's the list. 46 was Mr. and Mrs. Who. 35 was Old Soldiers. 33 was Dreams. 24 was April Fools, and 17 was Goodbye Radar. And he says, I have to say that Old Soldiers always hits me hard.
Oh,
thank you, Rick. Thanks for going back and doing the work that I didn't want to do. Appreciate that.
Well, Old Soldiers was certainly a very good episode.
Oh, yeah. And we're going to talk about that.
Our good friend Tim from Canada. I want to once again ask you guys to dig into Dennis Koenig and give us the straight poop on him. Well, I hope he doesn't have any poop on him, but anyway, his fingerprints are all over season 8. This is now the third time I've asked you to do an expose on him. You can't ignore him now. He either wrote or was the story editor on most of the shows in season 8. Please be sure to include him in your review. Love your podcast. Can't wait for the debate on dreams. I happen to be one of those that hate that episode. Well, okay, Dennis Koenig. I'll throw a little bit about Dennis Koenig out.
Please.
Don't know anything about him.
You're welcome, Tim.
No, I do. I knew a little bit about him. Dennis Koenig wrote a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
He's a very talented man, very nice man. Here, I'll give you a little bit of insight. He wrote episodes of Night Court, Carol and Company, Northern Exposure, Growing Pains, and he and I think it's his wife, her name is Wendy Kaut. They created Anything But Love, which is a series on a while ago. So that's who Dennis Koenig is. I think I met him once. I think he was running out the stage or running away from me. I'm not sure which, but he seemed to be in a hurry. And but very nice guy, I understand. And he wrote a lot of good stuff. And I think he has a book out. Actually,
he does.
Yes, he has a book out.
His first novel, it's called A Hard Place, and it was published back in 2020. We'll put a link to the book in the show notes for this episode at mashmatters.com. He also was one of the people behind Aftermash.
Yes.
And of course, this season he wrote 17 episodes in all, beginning with Too Many Cooks, which is the first episode of season 8. Otherwise, we don't really have much information on Dennis.
Yeah.
Hopefully, maybe we can get him on this here podcast. That'd be nice.
That'd be real good to get that Dennis Koenig on this here podcast. Hey, Dennis, come on to Mash Matters. We're having a darn good time over here.
Well, if that doesn't do it, I don't know what will. Okay, so let's just jump into season 8, and we're going to start with the episode we just mentioned, Too Many Cooks, written by Dennis Koenig and directed by Charles S. Dubin. The featured guest stars include our former guest, Ed Begley Jr.
Yes.
And also John Randolph, and many people know John Randolph. He was the very first Morty Seinfeld on Seinfeld, but he's probably most known as Clark's dad in Christmas Vacation.
As soon as Colonel Potter cuts you loose here, you'll be down in Seoul on my personal staff.
On what?
On your personal what?
I'll be the envy of every general in the Far East Command.
Did you just hear our souffle bowl?
No, that was my stomach sobbing.
Well, good luck, Conway. There'll always be a placemat out here for you.
It was inevitable, General. Shea Klinger moves uptown.
What?
We're a package, sir. Where he goes, I go. Right, buddy? Partners to the end.
Sir, I'm very grateful, but with all due respect, I'd like to go back and cook for my old unit up on the line.
I never met this man before in my life.
Linda says this season had a lot of excellent guest stars. Pat Hingle, Ed Begley Jr., Susan St. James, the incomparable Mako, etc. Of all the episodes, I think my favorite is Too Many Cooks. I never fail to laugh when Potter's buddy calls Klinger that USO guy, or when Charles enters the mess tent and starts sniffing Parmesan.
Parmesan. The meat is a mystery, but it's definitely Parmesan.
It was very funny. Very funny. The only objection I had to that show is I was not in it.
You weren't.
And I think it would have been a good inclusion, actually, to have a quick moment between the guy who served the horrible food and the guy who was serving all the wonderful food.
Yes.
We'll call Dennis Koenig and talk to him about that.
Let's just jump ahead now to the next episode of season 8, Are You Now Margaret? Written by Thad Mumford and Dan Wilcox, directed once again by Charles S. Dubin. Lawrence Pressman, guest starring as a congressional aide, R. Theodore Williamson. He is still working in the business and one of those guys you've seen in everything, but you may not know his name. Well, his name is Lawrence Pressman. John Rappaport, we interviewed him way back. John was like one of the first interviews we did on the podcast. And if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it because he tells a great story about this episode. They were very hesitant to leak a lot of the information from these episodes to the promotions department because CBS would promote key plot lines in their advertising. In this one, the whole story is that Margaret is being investigated as being a communist sympathizer. That is the big reveal going into the first commercial break. It's kind of a shocker if you haven't seen it before.
Yeah.
CBS, according to John Rappaport, in their advertising on television, it started with the headline, Margaret's a commie? Yeah. So the title, Are You Now Margaret? We had this witch hunt with Senator Joseph McCarthy, where he was accusing just about anybody he didn't like as being a communist. And when he would summon them before the Congressional Committee, he would ask,
Are you now, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
So the title, Are You Now Margaret, comes from that.
Very clever. Very clever. Wonderful episode.
And Charles Dubin, who directed this, he was blacklisted. He was a part of this whole communist witch hunt, which we talked about with his daughter Zan when she was on the podcast. So I'm sure this was very personal to him as he was directing this.
Yeah, very.
Okay, let's say she can remember Williamson. What if she just doesn't want to tell you?
Well, if she chooses not to cooperate, I would have no choice but to subpoena her to testify before the committee.
Testify before the committee?
You've read about the committee, Margaret. They make it very simple for you. You can either hang yourself or your friends.
Or both. Whatever you do, just showing up can cost you your career.
Please. Wait a minute. Let me think.
Don't tell this snake anything.
Bad advice. By her silence, she would be implicating herself in the Red Menace.
And don't tell us about the Red Menace. We're up to our ankles in it. It comes out of those kids you keep sending us.
I'm a reasonable man. I'll be here for 2 more days. That should give the Major ample opportunity to jog her memory, which shouldn't be too difficult for a model American.
Also, you start seeing something in the episodes this season. The opening credits list Gary Berghoff, even though he was not a contracted member of the main cast anymore. So now it says also starring Gary Berghoff. You see that throughout the season, although he does not appear in most episodes. He is not in this episode. The episodes that he is in before Goodbye Radar, he's on extended R&R. So his credit is there, but he is not. The website MASH4077TV.com does a deep dive on this, and I'll include the link to that article in the show notes as well.
My impression of that would be that when Gary made the deal to do whatever he was decided that he was able to do, that his agents made that deal. So that was a contractual agreement between Gary Berghoff and the agent and CBS.
Right.
I would imagine that's why they did that.
And it continued even after Goodbye Radar, which is an episode that we'll be discussing today. Let's look at some listener comments for Are You Now Margaret?
Stephanie says, Are You Now Margaret is hands down my favorite of this season. You really see the evolution of Margaret's character and relationship with the doctors, where they become more supportive, us against the world conspirators, which really allows for the friendly pranksters dynamic to expand. Bookending the season with this and April Fools was a nice move.
Kurt says, as a huge fan of the evolution of Margaret's character, I have to go with Are You Now Margaret? In the early seasons, her plight would have been played for laughs, but in this episode, you can see how much everyone in the camp truly cares about her when they all band together to help her.
And Sparksify on Instagram says, Season 8 is so difficult because there is a lot of great episodes this season, but I would have to say mine is Are You Now Margaret? It touches on the McCarthyism era paranoia and the fact that they took a more of a different choice in Margaret rather than making Hawkeye the focus also throws the audience the first time you watch the episode. The B plot also ties nicely with the A plot, and that also makes for a good episode.
You want to grab her one more time? I think I got your bad side.
What the hell is going on here?
We thought your wife might appreciate some photos of your fact-finding tour.
Suitable for hanging.
You wouldn't stoop to blackmail.
What about you, you lecherous hypocrite? You're so sure I'm a communist, but for a little tumble, you let me off the hook?
Don't be absurd. I would never have let you off the hook.
You mean you were gonna... And then you... Joe Creek! Get out of here.
Wait a minute. It's 3 poses for a quarter. You've still got 2 to go.
We could take one of each face.
Enjoy your jokes, people. But you have been duped by a communist sympathizer.
What a coincidence. So have you.
Next up, Gorilla My Dreams, written by Bob Colleary and directed by Alan Alda. Guest starring Mako as Lieutenant Hung Lee Park. We had Huanani Min as the gorilla prisoner, and Joshua Bryant returns, the second of 3 appearances as Sergeant Jack Scully. This one is one of the more serious plot lines.
Yes.
You have this gorilla. She's believed to be a spy. And you have this overzealous officer wanting to take her in for not just questioning, but torture and murder. It's tough. It's tough to watch sometimes.
It was, although I have to say, I really, really liked Mako. I thought his portrayal of that character was just superb.
Yeah.
He walked a fine line when he tried to be a little bit more kind within the structure of the camp and talking to the individuals, playing chess with Charles.
Yeah.
That was a wild scene, but I thought he did a great job being that guy and expressing almost the camp's frustration along with his and his needs, because he was there to do a job and that's what he had to do.
Yeah.
And the reality is this person was a terrorist.
Yeah.
And she was what he said she was. And, and I didn't really realize when the idea that she was going to be tortured, I didn't hear any evidence that was going to happen. Nobody said that except.
Oh, Scully. Scully says it. He says,
Whether she's a gorilla or not, from what I hear, if he gets hold of her, he won't let up till he's got what he wants.
You mean torture?
Well, he starts with torture. Then to take your mind off the pain, he kills you.
Yeah. But that really wasn't. You saw no evidence of that from anybody other than his, impression of what this guy was going to do.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, I thought Mako was absolutely dead on.
Oh, yeah.
Terrific portrayal of that character.
And this is one of many appearances that Mako makes on the series.
Yeah.
But this is, I think, his most impactful appearance by far.
He was terrific. Yeah.
And we've discussed the hubbub over Hawkeye saying SOB, and maybe it was or wasn't the first time it was said on TV, but it did cause a big to-do, and there were a lot of people who wrote in because all of a sudden somebody there on their favorite TV show was saying a little wordy dirt.
And they should have been tortured, I think. Patrick says, Gorilla My Dreams built to what was a very tense moment. I agree, Patrick. Hawkeye calling the Korean officer an SOB on primetime TV was pretty much unheard of. It also showed another ugly side of war.
병신! 난 너를 저주한다!
She says you're a fool and she curses you.
Oh, she does, huh?
I'm not lying, Captain. Look at her face.
너희들은 내 조국을 짓밟고 내 동포를 죽인 놈들을 구해주고 있어.
She says you save lives of those who kill my people and rape my land.
내가 너를 죽이고야 말겠다. 병문에서 원수놈을 죽이고 했듯이.
I would kill you as I tried to kill my enemy in your hospital.
이 살인자도 죽일 것이고 너놈들 중에 한 놈만 죽여도 내가 기꺼이 죽겠다.
As I would kill this murderer, I would gladly die if I could kill but one of you. Now, if you have heard enough, Captain.
You can't wait to get at her, can you? Can you?
You have already taken enough of my time, Captain. Can you not see that this woman's life is more important to you than it is to her? I will go now.
You don't want to be late for your killing.
You have done your job. Now I will do mine.
You son of a bitch.
And that brings us to Goodbye Radar Parts 1 and 2.
Isn't it over? Aren't we done? This is it, right?
No, this is not it. You would think that this would be a finale, but no. It's only the 4th episode of the season. Written by Ken Levine and David Isaacs, directed again by Charles S. Dubin. According to Ken Levine's blog, and we discussed this episode when Ken and David were on the podcast, but this episode was originally scheduled to be the season 7 finale. But the network worked out a deal with Gary to come back with a limited schedule and to do this finale as a 2-parter during November sweeps. So Ken and David, they left the series at the end of season 7, but they did come back to write this 2-parter. But they had to scramble to put together a final episode for season 7. That's where A Night at Rosie's came into play. And they wrote that over a weekend and it began filming the very next day. So had everything gone the way that Ken and David had planned it to, we never would have had the episode Night at Rosie's in season 7, which is a very popular episode. And of course, very near and dear to us because it has our sweet Eileen Saki in it.
Yeah.
But it was originally going to be a finale. And now it's here, stuck right in the middle of the season.
I watched it and I got a little teary-eyed.
Yeah?
I didn't think I would, but a couple of times I went, oh, gee.
What'd your mom say, Radar?
Mostly that she's okay. Uncle Ed's funeral is tomorrow. Everybody in the town is going to be there. Except me. Our neighbor, Mr. Whitsett, said that he would look after the farm till everything's settled, and then Mom can take over for herself. She says it's about time she gets off her fat you-know-what anyway.
It's not going to be easy for her, though, is it? As I remember, the lady has some high blood pressure.
Yep, little arthritis when it rains, too. But she says she's fine.
Quite a woman, your mother.
Yeah, I know.
Takes after her son. How about you, Radar? You all right?
Huh? Yeah, I'm okay. I mean, I don't want to be, but I guess I have to be. I'm the man of the family now.
That's right, son. And you're going home. Go get yourself a DA-7 hardship discharge and type your name on it.
His journey as Radar, it began with the film.
Yeah.
He was Radar in the film.
Yeah.
Then it carries over to the TV series where he was on for, 8 seasons. And then even beyond that, he did make an appearance as Radar twice. He made an appearance in Aftermath. And then there was that awful unsold TV pilot called Walter, where Radar shows up in St. Louis as a cop. Don't ask me why. I mean, there aren't many people in the business who can say that they play a character that not only spanned film, but also television and beyond television. I mean, that's impressive.
Mm-hmm. Very impressive. And certainly Gary Berghoff is an impressive actor.
Yes.
I go back to McLean Stevenson saying when he was on, we played his recordings. He said that, in his opinion, Gary Berghoff was the best actor in the show.
Yeah.
And, when you watch it and you see the little things that he does and being involved in every scene like he was, and he's just always there and he never went anywhere else. He was always focused on what he was doing. And that last episode when he was standing in the mess tent and looked up and saw the sign and everything, that got to me. That really did. And I think it was because of him.
Mm-hmm.
He took me there.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a story. But if it hadn't have been him, I don't know whether I would have been emotionally affected. But he really did it. He took me into that emotional place. So
Gary is a great actor. His hairline is not. He was 36 when he filmed this episode, and he's supposed to be 18. So he's double the age of his character in real life. And up to that point, he could still pass as that young, naive guy until he takes his hat off. And then you're like, okay, I don't think this is Radar anymore, but whatever.
Yeah.
Another note, there's the moment where Margaret kisses Radar in post-op.
Yeah.
And he says, wow, hot lips. That is the final reference to Margaret's nickname of Hot Lips in the series.
That was great.
Yeah.
Well, David says, let me be the one rare person, maybe the only person who's going to lift up my praise for Goodbye Radar Part 2 on this question. But it's for completely selfish reasons. This was the very first episode of MASH that I ever saw. I had a lot of school friends who had talked about the series, but it wasn't until after 7 seasons had come and gone and almost a half dozen episodes into the start of the program's final 4 and clearly more serious years, and with the second part of a 2-parter in which one of the program's most iconic characters leaves, for goodness sakes, that I was introduced to the people and the situations of the 4077. My goodness. It would take later exposures to the daily syndicated reruns for me to actually get to know Radar and Henry and Frank and Hawkeye and everyone else, and to properly connect with the intended impact of Radar's Goodbye episode in a later viewing. And what a message-filled, unexpected, and memorable final half hour that was for Radar. Goodbye Radar Part 2 caused me to be the big MASH and after MASH fan that I am today, prompting me to become an autograph collector, giving me a reason to meet almost half the cast, and allowing me the opportunity to hear a podcast in which Jeff Maxwell himself read words that I wrote. Ta-da! There you go, David. Jeff Maxwell. Let's see if we can get him. If we can get him, we'll have to put his credit on every single episode. But if we can get him, he'll read these words again.
He won't answer our calls.
I know. Jeez, these people are hard to... I don't get to...
Diva.
Yeah, really. Showbiz, diva.
Listen, Radar, I guess you realize I'm kind of fond of you. Lord knows I've never met a soul I could depend on more. But above all that, you've been a damn good friend. Well, friend, it's time we said goodbye. Time you got on with your life. You've come as far as you can go here. You've earned your wings. Now you've got to fly.
You're right, sir.
I am?
Yeah. I was going to tell you that I decided to go home after all. I really liked your speech, though.
Thanks. I practiced all morning.
All right, moving on. Period of Adjustment. This is written by Jim Mulligan and John Rappaport, directed again by Charles S. Dubin. Charlie Dubin won the Directors Guild Award for this episode and also received a Primetime Emmy Award nomination. And Mulligan and Rappaport received a Writers Guild Award nomination as well. This follows the camp as they adjust to Radar's departure. They realize how good he was at his job. But then you have BJ dealing with a whole new range of emotions because the first time his daughter called anybody daddy, it was not him, it was Radar.
Hey, guys, listen to this. Peg says a meeting with Radar went just as we planned. Aaron and I went to the airport, and we spent 2 or 3 hours with him. He sure is a cute little guy, and so nice. Sweetheart, it was really funny. When Aaron first saw Radar in his uniform, she ran up to him and said, "Hi, Daddy."
Out of the mouths of babes comes drollery.
Come on, what else did she say?
She just goes on with some other stuff.
Who cares anyway? Radar, radar, radar. Even from somebody 10,000 miles away. That's all I hear about.
So a couple of things. There's something interesting at the beginning. When the credits are being listed at the very beginning of the show, they frame it differently on the screen so it doesn't block Colonel Potter's face while he's speaking on the phone. I don't think that they do that in any other episode. And also, this is the second time that Hawkeye has been assaulted by a drunken best friend. In a mail call from season 2, Trapper receives a letter from home that makes him drink himself silly, and he tries to desert, and Hawkeye tries to stop him, and Trapper knocks him down with his big stuffed duffel. And then you had the classic vaccinate Radar drawing on the dartboard. I don't know who drew that, but it's great.
John says, Period of Adjustment, in my opinion, the very best episode ever in the seamlessly combining drama and comedy, as well as Mike Farrell's finest performance. Wow.
Love Mash 75 on Instagram says, Period of Adjustment, the way BJ hurt was so eloquently portrayed by Mike Farrell, how much he was willing to open his pain to Hawkeye and how Hawkeye hurt because his best friend was hurting. It showed for the first time in the show how deep a bond between best friends can be.
And Ken says, this will be an unusual choice, but Period of Adjustment is my favorite from a season full of bangers. Cast members have left previously, but this is the only time we feel the emotional fallout of envy and grief. And it's really funny to boot.
I have the distinct impression you've got more in your mind than cirrhosis of the cerebellum. In OR today, the patients were more fun than you were.
Why shouldn't they be? Some of them will go home. Radar went home. You remember Radar? Short, cute. My daughter calls him Daddy.
Oh, so that's it. It's the letter that's bothering you.
Yeah, the letter. So what? I mean, I'm sorry if it annoys you, but I have this strange aversion to being away from my family. I miss them.
It's the same for all of us. You don't think I miss my father?
You really think that's the same? Come on, Hawkeye. How old is your father? How old?
62.
62? How old was he when you saw him last? 60, 61?
Something like that, yeah.
Has he changed much? Was he walking and talking when you left? Aaron wasn't. But I hear she is now. Does your father remember what you look like? Will he know you when he sees you? Is he calling anybody else son?
Beej, I know how you feel.
Yeah? Tell me how much you miss your kid.
Okay, I don't have a kid and I don't have a wife, but let me tell you something. Listen, I've been stuck in this sewer longer than you have. And nobody wants out of here more than I do.
No?
No, and let me tell you something else. You're wasting your time with that stuff. I can tell you from personal experience, it won't work for long.
Really?
Yeah, it may get you drunk, but it won't get you home.
Oh, yeah?
What are you doing?
Just trying to wait anymore.
Next up, Nurse Doctor. Story by Cy Rosen, teleplay by Cy Rosen and Thad Mumford and Dan Wilcox, and directed by Charlie Dubin. Guest starring Alexander Stoddard as Lieutenant Gail Harris, the nurse who wants to become a doctor and develops feelings for Father Mulcahy. Yet another nurse that we've never seen before and will never see again. You may recall we did an episode on least favorite episodes, and this was on my list of least favorite episodes, mainly because I found the character, Lieutenant Gail Harris, to be incredibly annoying and childish and insufferable. But that's just me.
She was a little self-absorbed.
Just a little. Yeah. The one big shining moment in this episode, we are introduced to creamed weenies.
I can't look, BJ. What is it?
Creamed peas, creamed turnip, and creamed beet.
Oh, I am so glad I'm not looking.
Simmer down, boys. Canned milk is all they have to cook with.
What's that?
Soup? Cream of weenie?
You creamed weenies? Isn't there a shred of human decency left in the world?
If I see one more drop of canned milk, I'm going to go find a cow and make her discontented.
I personally think it saved the whole episode. I mean,
I think so too. It's only
really,
saving grace.
Honest to God. Come on. Otherwise, that nurse, the self-absorbed narcissistic nurse. But now you got creamed weenies, and that saves us all.
But, just because I don't necessarily like the episode doesn't mean that listeners don't like the episode. We heard from some who picked this as their favorite episode.
Yes. And maybe they even like creamed weenies. You can get the recipe in Secrets of the Lost Secrets of Private Igor, Secrets of the Mash Mess. I don't even remember the title of my book. Let's see. Secrets of the Mash Mess, the Lost Recipes of Private Igor. Yes, a good recipe for creamed weenies is in it.
And you can find that at our website, mashmatters.com.
Or you can come over to my house and buy one. Dorothea says, there are quite a few really good episodes, but I say, Nurse Doctor, I love the dialogue between Father Mulcahy and Hawkeye about the affair. Makes me laugh every time. I know it is not a very loved episode, but it is actually one of my top 5 ever. Could watch it every day.
And Michelle says, Nurse Doctor, the scene with Colonel Potter when he tells Hawkeye to stop talking about her and Margaret to stop hating her and Father Mulcahy to stop dating her. Classic comedy gold. Well, we'll just agree to disagree.
I did like the scene with Colonel Potter when he does it. I kind of enjoyed it.
There are good moments in that episode.
Yes.
Whenever Lieutenant Gail Harris is not on the screen, it's so good. It's so good.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be, it's been a few years, but I believe her husband is and was an actor as well. And I was friends with him.
Oh.
And I think I met them as a couple somewhere. But I did not know she was going to do that show. That's a fascinating story, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Come on.
I just hope she's not listening.
Well, she was good. She did her job.
Yeah, she did her job.
She worked hard to do
the character was written that way. I understand.
Yes, it was.
Fingernails on a chalkboard.
I get it.
People react to you the way they do because you're different. They aren't quite sure how to treat you.
You think that's it?
Absolutely. I have the same problem myself. It's always, hello, father, never just plain hi. Or excuse the language, father. Or present company accepted, father. Nobody ever calls me by my given name.
What is your name?
Let me see. Oh, yes, of course. Well, the whole thing is Francis John Patrick Mulcahy.
That's much too stuffy. I like Johnny.
It's funny. My mother always called me Johnny. Well, she was a woman, too.
Oh. Well, I'll tell you this. If I ever do make it to med school, I'll have Mrs. Mulcahy's son Johnny to thank for it.
Well, I'm just glad I was here to help. Gail? Well, let's see, where were we? Something about occidentals, I believe.
Well, I guess I care more than I thought.
Perhaps it would be best if you studied with one of the doctors. But Gail, I think you may be expecting more from me than I'm able to give.
Next up in Season 8 is Private Finance, written by Dennis Koenig and directed by Charles S. Dubin. This is the episode where Eddie Hastings, the corporal, gets his money belt shot up, and there was $8,000 in his money belt that apparently was obtained through nefarious activities. And at the same time, you've got Klinger helping the young Korean girl. And then Mrs. Lee, the mother, thinks that Klinger is doing bad things with her daughter. And so she tries to perforate him with a pitchfork.
Klinger, this lady seems a little cranky.
Actually, sir, it's very amusing.
And how come Madam Pitchfork isn't laughing?
This is Mrs. Lee. She thinks I was playing footsies with her daughter here.
This child?
Yes, sir.
Give me that boy.
Sir, believe me, it's not the truth. It's a terrible misunderstanding.
You're swarthy, aren't you? Hot-blooded and all that? Don't worry, ma'am. I'll check this whole thing out. Little lady, you take your mother and her salad fork home. I understand perfectly. I've got a daughter of my own, and if he ever laid a hand on her, I'd have him bailed and stacked in a flash.
Thank you, sir.
Klinger, you better make peace with that lady before she serves you up as a hairy shish kebab.
No real listener comments on this one. Nobody picked this one as their top episode, but that's okay. It's still a good episode. Just so you know, the $8,800 in 1952 today would be $95,185.
That's a big jump. Yeah.
That's a big jump. Yeah.
Wow.
And if you pay close attention during the scene where Mrs. Lee is trying to attack Klinger with the pitchfork, you'll notice the number of prongs on the pitchfork changes in the scene.
Maybe a prong or two was in Klinger. I don't know.
I know. Maybe she left a prong in him. Yeah.
A prong. Yeah, Klinger. Now, did the amount of money change? Because for some reason, when the check came back, because the parents sent the check back,
yeah,
somebody said it's $500.
Oh, no. It was over $8,000.
Okay. Well, maybe the $500 was something else because I heard, and I thought, wait a minute, it's more than $500.
Well, they give some of that money to the family. And I think Colonel Potter says,
put that $500 in a safe place the minute you get to Busan.
And thank you for doing business with the Sherman Potter Travel Agents.
And to Save the Klinger Foundation.
Yeah, okay. It wasn't the martini.
I mean, it could have been.
It might have been.
Next up, Mr. and Mrs. Who, written by Ronnie Graham, directed by Burt Metcalf, guest starring Claudette Nevins as Donna Marie Parker, also known as Mrs. Chuck Emerson Winchester III. This one caught me off guard. I didn't realize how many people love this episode. I like it. Don't get me wrong, because I love Charles. But there was a lot of love from listeners for this episode.
Well, it should have been. I mean, it was a very cute idea, and it certainly worked quite well when you watch it.
Yeah.
Leslie says, my favorite is Mr. and Mrs. Who, because, one, gosh darn it, I bet Charles looks just too cute with little smiles on his knees. Two, the Reverend B.J. Honeydews saying, you may now ignore the bride. Three, Father Mulcahy getting to help with some medical research. Four, Margaret's bouquet of 4 roses. 5, Klinger's, don't worry, I got the negatives. 6, Hawkeye saying, we'll take care of Shaw, you go meet the missus. And 7, Potter's willingness to break the edict from Icor.
Jeff says, since early in this podcast, I've watched Winchester more closely based on Ryan listing this character as one of his favorites. I have loved this episode since the first time I saw a less edited version on MeTV. My local TV station and TV Land's edits deleted the scene when Charles realizes what a treasure his new wife is and shows genuine love for her. This, of course, after he desperately and embarrassingly asks her what her name is. A scene that I rewind 2 or 3 times each time I watch. It's in my top 10 series wide. And I admit that I wish they would have thought of suggesting that Charles and she might reconnect after the final episode.
And David says, several great episodes. My favorite is episode 9, Mr. and Mrs. Who. Charles utters my favorite of his lines from the entire series. You wouldn't mind answering a deeply personal question? Of course not. What is your name? The way Winchester delivers that line, utter perfection.
And our friend, the MASH historian, says it's so hard to choose between Old Soldiers and Mr. and Mrs. Who because the acting is both incredible. The older I get, the more I appreciate the acting abilities of David Ogden Stiers. Amen.
Well, he certainly delivered the line much better than I did. So that's...
Yes.
Well, you didn't have to agree with me. I mean, I'm just commenting.
I mean, no.
Let's talk about the wedding.
All right.
Now, was that in the Parasol Baths as well?
Oh, no, you big lug, at the party. Remember you got up on the... You don't remember.
Well, it was such a full evening. There are certain little gaps in my memory. I can't be expected to remember every detail. Please, go on.
The whole thing was your idea from the beginning.
What?
You kept walking around saying, I can't keep my hands off this angel. Somebody marry us before it's too late. Mako Nakamura married us just to shut you up.
Mako Nakamura. Was he one of those tawdry backstreet marrying Sams?
No, actually, a highly respected bartender at the hotel where we had the party.
The bartender performed the ceremony?
Well, it was a toss-up between him and the doorman, but the doorman was busy hailing a rickshaw.
Then we aren't actually...
Oh!
In that event, you wouldn't mind answering an extremely personal question.
Of course not.
What is your name?
One more note about this episode. This is the return of everybody's favorite ailment, Korean hemorrhagic fever. It was originally featured in season 4, Soldier of the Month. This is when Frank contracts the illness, which leads to Hawkeye and BJ proctoring the test, where Jeff utters the famous line,
I thought there were going to be refreshments here.
There you go.
What a delivery. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. No, sit down, everybody. Come on. It's all right.
Give that man an Emmy. All right, moving on. We still have a long way to go here. The Yellow Brick Road, written by Mike Farrell, directed by Charles S. Dubin, featuring the 4th of 5 guest appearances by Soon Tek Oh. How I wish we could have talked to Soon Tek Oh. He was a delight in every episode he was in. He passed away in 2018. G.W. Bailey's first appearance as Sergeant Rizzo.
Yeah, here I am. Hey. And Brent says, Yellow Brick Road. I lost count of how many times I've watched and listened to this episode. I need to fall asleep to some sort of sound, and this episode is my go-to. The storylines, I'm not sure that's a good, is that a really good thing to say? Well, anyway, the storylines are perfectly written with a great mix of humor and seriousness. More than once, this episode has helped me fall asleep when I thought sleep would be a struggle. It's just that calming of an episode.
And another Brent says, I had a bout with food poisoning right before Thanksgiving 2017, and it reminded me of Klinger's Tainted Turkeys. So the Yellow Brick Road is one.
All right, and Mike says, Yellow Brick Road, the whole plot around the turkey made this episode for me, and the scene with Igor describing his sickness to Potter was just hilarious. Let me read that one more time. The whole... And the scene with Igor describing his sickness to Potter was just hilarious. Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Now then, son, feeling a little more fit, are you?
I've been better, sir.
The best way to beat this thing is just put it out of your mind. Get up on your feet as soon as you can. You must be feeling a little better.
Except for my stomach, sir. It's kind of like being on the ocean. Up and down. And up and down.
Uh-huh.
And then it gets up into my head and starts spinning around and around, you know?
Son, you don't have to.
About the only thing I can do.
Private?
Sir?
Move over.
You know, I actually got salmonella poisoning. I personally had it, and it's not fun.
Oh, I had it a few years ago, too.
Did you?
And it was the worst.
Yeah, it's not
the worst.
You don't want to get it at all.
No.
I don't know which letter you had next to yours, but I had salmonella D, which is supposedly going to... Did you have D?
I didn't get it officially tested. I just know that that's what it was.
Yeah. Okay.
And there was a certain restaurant that I went to that gave it to me, that included it with my order. And I have not been back to that restaurant.
What a surprise.
Nor will I.
I as well got it from a restaurant and hired an attorney to try and go after the restaurant because I was sick for about 3 weeks. It was a bad one.
Just the worst.
Oh, it's terrible. It's a terrible feeling. But, well, I won't go into my legal battles, but I lost.
You lost in more ways than one, probably.
Many.
Interesting, though, I found this note. Klinger is blamed for the salmonella outbreak because he procured the tainted turkeys.
Yeah.
But salmonella is caused by eating improperly cooked turkey.
Yes.
So it would be the cook's fault.
Yeah, you know, they should have done that. They should have talked about that because that would have been a bunch of doctors there. And they didn't say, wait a minute, it's not Klinger. It wasn't cooked well.
But then the fingers would have pointed at you, probably.
Well, I'd have taken it. I would have gotten on screen another
exactly.
time.
You had more lines. This episode also features BJ's first motorcycle. He gets another one next season in the episode Blood and Guts, and then a third bike in Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen. Where do all of his bikes go?
Yeah, where'd they go?
He keeps collecting motorcycles. We don't know where they go.
Yeah. And, you know, I have to say, I had a really good time doing that scene with Harry Morgan. It was just a moment in time when I adored every second that was happening. So, and I adored watching it, too. It's such a wonderful thing to work with him. It was fun.
Colonel, what's wrong? You look awful.
I'm glad you noticed. I'd hate to feel this rotten and have it just be my little secret.
What's wrong, sir?
Salmonella! Vocamp's down with it. Klinger got a Thanksgiving deal on some low-mileage turkeys.
Colonel, With all due respect, any fool would know better than to actually eat gypsy poultry.
If there's one thing we don't need around here, Winchester, it's hindsight. Now let's get to post-op. Pierce and Honeycutt aren't back yet, so Mulcahy's been doing a solo. He'll be glad to hand over the reins.
You look like you can use some rest, sir.
I'll be all right, Margaret.
Colonel, I insist. You won't do any good if you make yourself weaker.
Major Houlihan, don't get your Irish up with me.
We can handle it.
And we shall, Colonel, just as soon as we've taken a little time to freshen up a bit.
Fine, you do that, Winchester, and I'll have room service send you over a nice turkey sandwich. So, you want to move it now or move it later?
Oh, moving out, yeah.
Next up is Lifetime, written by Alan Alda and Walter Deschel, MD, and directed by Alan Alda. This story is told in real time and can be seen with the clock on the screen. This is one of those, first of all, it's a rare MASH episode that didn't have a B plot line. It was all, this one focus was this one patient. And it's one of those groundbreaking episodes. I enjoyed this episode.
I did too. You know, dealing with a very creative fellow like Alan Alda,
yeah,
he really took a step and said, hey, let's do something interesting with this. And boy, they did.
And he co-wrote it with Walt Deschel, who was the medical advisor. So to make sure that all of the correct medical jargon is portrayed in that. Now, there's an actor named Kevin Brophy. He plays Roberts, Harold's friend who insists on being there with him when Harold dies. He makes an appearance in Aftermash, but as a completely different character. In Aftermash, he was a member of the 407th that we never saw and was friends with Klinger. And then he also made appearances in 3 episodes of Trapper John ND. So Kevin Brophy hit the MASH trifecta.
He did.
Roberts, your friend is dying. And it doesn't make any sense, but maybe there's some good that can come out of it.
What do you mean? What good?
Captain, Hawkeye says as soon as you get the graft, put it in this and rush it to the OR.
Get lost, Klinger.
Okay, but Hawkeye wants to know as soon as he's dead.
Will you shut up and get out of here?
I hope I didn't say anything wrong.
You bastard. You've just been waiting to use him. You don't care who he is or anything about him. He's just a piece of meat to you.
I thought he was very good.
He
did that role quite well.
My question is, why would you play poker on the chopper pad if you knew the chopper was coming and all the money was going to get blown away?
Hold it, offense the rock, the chopper's landing.
I think that's a really good question. I agree.
That's just a terrible place to play poker.
I mean, come on. There are a lot of smart people sitting around there. Why would you do that? That would be the dumbest place you could play poker with paper money flying everywhere and you lose everything you won. That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Let's call Alan.
Well, in an interview with CNN, Alan listed this episode among his favorites from the entire series.
Yeah.
You know, some of our listeners, it's their favorite as well. Frankie says Lifetime is a masterclass in storytelling. This is an episode that could have only happened at this point in the show's run. MASH continued to push the envelope, understanding the viewer was ready to explore more serious subject matter. There isn't a wasted minute in this episode from beginning to end.
Chadley says, I love Lifetime. The idea of the clock running in real time, even advancing 2 minutes where the commercials were. It would have been great if it had aired with the clock running in the bottom corner during the commercials. It is a wonderful and different perspective for the show.
John says, Lifetime, a brilliant, maybe first of its kind episode that blends comedy, drama, and tension. It never feels gimmicky. The real-time method aids the story, not the other way around. This episode is endlessly rewatchable.
And Michael says, Lifetime, partially because of the gimmick being really cool, but also because it highlighted how Charles and Frank Burns differed. Frank once tried to get out of donating blood. Charles volunteers despite adverse effects to his own health. Good point.
Charles, you're mumbling.
I think that blood we're getting is coming directly from his brain.
One other thing. It is very important. You mustn't forget that.
Good night, sweet prince.
Next up, Dear Uncle Abdul, written by Jim Mulligan and John Rappaport, directed by William Jurgensen. We see veteran character actor Richard Lineback make his first of 2 guest appearances. This time he's playing Eddie. He returns as a different character in season 11's Trick or Treatment. This is one of those popular Dear Home episodes. This time it's Klinger writing kind of a day in the life of the camp And it includes all kinds of things. Mulcahy writing a war song and Charles taking Klinger out to shoot pigeons. And I don't know if you noticed this, Jeff, when you watched it, but the pigeon catches fire when it's shot.
Yeah.
Remember yesterday I was a colonel's body? Well, today I'm a major's bird dog.
Silence, Klinger. Look ahead there, in that clearing. It is indeed our quarry.
Okay, I'll flush the little bugger. Then can we go home?
I promise you, if I bag one bird, you will be off the hook.
Now, big fella.
Teddy-ho! Yoink!
Ah! Holy Toledo. Either that bird hit a landmine, or you just shot down a kamikaze pigeon.
And, William Jurgensen, just to throw out, he was a really terrific guy. He was the director of photography for umpteen years.
Yeah.
And I think he directed a few episodes, but I think this may have been the first one. I don't know, but he was a great guy.
I'm curious about Mulcahy's war song that he writes. He has 2 attempts at a war song.
Yeah.
Who wrote the song? I mean, Jim Mulligan and John Rappaport may have written the lyrics, but who wrote the melody? I mean, William Christopher was a musician.
Mm-hmm.
So is it possible that William came up with the melody for those songs?
My guess would be yes. And I don't know for sure, but my guess would be yes. I think because I did remember him sitting at that piano and doing little things. So I would imagine that perhaps he did write the melody. Yep.
There's also a little thing, and if you blink, you'll miss it. But Potter has his paint case, and on it says Captain Sherman Potter.
Oh,
isn't that nice?
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows how long he's had that.
Yeah, that's great. Wow. Really cool.
This episode also centers around a joke, Hawkeye's favorite joke.
Yes.
I have some questions. Is the joke funny? It's okay. It's a cute joke.
Mm-hmm.
I think BJ's reaction to the joke was spot on.
Yes.
The boss says, that's all you do? Bird imitations? Get it? Bird imitation?
Yeah, I get it. It's cute.
Cute? You give the world's funniest joke a smirk and a cute? That's like saying Ava Gardner has pleasant features.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't think it was all that funny. Certainly nothing to write Korea about.
But then BJ is going around telling the joke.
Mm-hmm.
And I have an issue with editing.
Oh, go.
I watched MASH in syndication. So every time I saw this episode, in the syndicated version, they cut out BJ telling the joke.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow.
You just hear how everybody's responding to him telling the joke. And if you watch it on Hulu or if on the DVDs, the unedited versions, you get the last half of the joke being told by BJ.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it works better without BJ on screen telling the joke.
All right.
It's funnier because you never hear BJ tell it. All you hear is the reaction and people saying, well, he has lilt and panache and all that. We don't need to hear BJ telling the joke. I think it's ruined, actually, by BJ telling the joke.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first on MASH Matters.
The defense rests.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I agreed with your opinion about the joke being cute, like BJ says the first. I thought he was going to say cute. That was going to be it. I thought we're going to move on now, ladies and gentlemen. But we didn't. And I thought, yeah, come on already. And I thought that the reactions were just a little over the top, but it was just, I guess, for the story. But it didn't inflame me.
Amanda says, Dear Uncle Abdul, that is the world's stupidest joke, and it makes me laugh every time. Plus, the scene where Margaret's footlocker saves her from the sniper is hilarious.
And Terry says, Dear Uncle Abdul, all the crazy stuff Klinger has to do, and my favorite scene is where Margaret shoots her footlocker to get a new one. My husband always says that's how I'd take care of it, too.
I'm so sorry for your husband.
Yeah, really. I'm not going over to Terry's house.
Yeah.
There I was in my tent. Suddenly a sniper leaped out at me and fired 2 shots. Bang, bang! Without hesitation, my valiant footlocker flung itself in the direct line of fire, giving its life that I might live. So take this worthless piece of junk and get me a new one. And make it quick, or I'll use the same technique to replace a defective company clerk.
Next up is Captain's Outrageous. This is written by Thad Mumford and Dan Wilcox, directed by Burton Metcalf. We see the camp take over and help Rosie as she's injured. They keep the bar going. We also have this Turkish and Greek soldier feuding. Both of those actors, by the way, the Turkish soldier and the Greek, had been on MASH before. The angry Turkish guy played another angry Turkish guy in season 3's a rich full day. And then the Greek soldier, he appeared in season 7's They Call the Wind Korea. And we see John Orchard, who played Ugly John in season 1, returns as Muldoon, the Australian police officer who Rosie bribes with booze.
I'm Muldoon. How nice for you. How about my coffee? 1 coffee. Do I detect a trace of the United Kingdom in your accent?
Australia.
Oh. Coffee.
What's the big idea of putting coffee in my coffee cup?
What did you expect, petrol?
I expect Scotch whiskey in it.
Oh, I feel perfect fool.
Nice to see him back on MASH.
Yeah. It was fun. Yeah. He's a fun character to watch.
Yeah.
Fun guy to watch. Yeah. And of course, Eileen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Eileen Saki was just
wonderful.
Just so wonderful to watch her. We all miss her.
Yes.
Would you step on it, Doc? I gotta get back to what's left of my saloon.
Whoa, Senorita, you've got yourself a couple of cracked ribs there. We have to keep them off their feet for a week or so. We don't want you developing pneumonia.
A week or so? If I'm gone for 1 day, my waitresses will steal everything but kitchen sink.
How fortunate. As long as you still have your kitchen sink, you can continue your tradition of fine winemaking.
Funny stuff, bozo. But if I'm over here for a week, you'll be stomping your own grapes, because there's not gonna be no more Rosies.
No listener comments on this one, which I was a little surprised by.
Yeah.
Also, G.W. Bailey, he appears in this episode, but it's not clear that he is Rizzo because he acts like he doesn't really know Winchester. It seems like he would know who Winchester is if he's already been established. I don't know if that was if this episode was originally written to be earlier in the season or what, but it's just odd. And I don't know, it just doesn't have a Rizzo feel to it.
Another little thirst quencher? You must have a hollow leg, chum.
Got a Dear John letter from my girl. She dumped me for some college guy. You think some college guy is better than me?
Which college?
Rah. She's got to be crazy.
Have you by any chance read what Freud has to say on the subject of insanity?
Floyd who?
Not Floyd. Freud. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalytic thought.
You're pretty smart for a bartender, Porky.
The name is Charles Emerson Winchester III. You can call me Major.
You know, you talk like a college boy.
Harvard 43.
Close enough.
I think your point is well taken, because if he knew him, he probably wouldn't have done that.
Right.
He may not have done that because he's talking to a superior officer, and that's probably something he wouldn't have done.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's move on now to Stars and Stripes, written by Dennis Koenig and directed by Harry Morgan. This is the 5th of 9 episodes that Harry Morgan directed, and he received a Primetime Emmy Award nomination for directing this episode. We get the final appearance of Scully, and we see another big character arc with Margaret.
Yeah.
I dressed myself up in this costume for you, and all you want is more. No recognition that I've done anything special to please you. You take it for granted that everything you want is yours. What about what I want?
I've gotten used to giving orders. I guess deep down I'm really a sergeant.
What do you suppose I am deep down?
Deep down, a woman.
Go a little deeper.
A major.
I'm me. Sometimes a nurse, sometimes a major, sometimes a woman in love, sometimes all three at once.
Sounds like it's crowded in there.
And sometimes it's lonely in there.
I'm not sure I can handle a cast of thousands, Margaret. I'm used to a simple chain of command, with me in command.
And me in chains.
I think I feel a space opening up on that truck.
I think I'm going to miss you more than you know. Cooking eggs and playing house would make for a fine afternoon. And a couple of months ago, that would have been enough. But now I want more out of my life than an afternoon.
Okay, Margaret. Then I'll say goodbye. Tell everybody in there I said so long.
Marie, Patreon VIP from Sweden, says season 8 is wonderful, so it's a tough choice. But I'm going to go with Stars and Stripes, an amazing part of Margaret's character arc. Her realizing that she doesn't have to pretend to be something she's not to please a man. And she, for sure, can't be the only one who is willing to adapt in a relationship. It also has one of my favorite Margaret Hawkeye scenes.
You ever played double solitaire Scrabble?
Double solitaire.
Yeah. You make whatever you can out of what you got, and I make whatever I can out of what I got. And we don't score off each other. And if you need any extra letters, like a Y for sympathy, you can borrow one of mine.
How many points do I get if I find LOVE?
You win the game.
Harknerf. Well, I guess I keep looking.
Love that they have reached a point in their relationship where she can admit something is wrong and he can actually be supportive as a friend. And on a superficial note, Loretta Swit and Joshua Bryant make a gorgeous couple, so it's a very aesthetically pleasing episode too. Well, they do make a good couple.
And it's interesting too, because on paper, he's not necessarily the most appealing character.
Yeah.
But there's something in the charm and charisma of Joshua Bryant that makes Scully likable and makes him a popular supporting player.
Mm-hmm.
And Rena, listening to us from Northern Israel, says, first off, welcome back to the podcast. As a Jew, I also say, blessed is he who heals the sick. Well, thank you, Rena. I love Stars and Stripes, two beautiful, entirely believable plots, one showcasing the necessary teamwork that typified the MASH unit, the other showcasing Margaret coming into her own. In my humble opinion, more believable and true to character than her overly lauded emotional speeches in Nurses.
Ah.
I think that Nurses is the beginning of that arc, and now we're seeing the end of that arc.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I have to note, though, at the end of the episode, Margaret decides she's only going to date men who meet her minimum standard requirements.
20% my father, 10% Scully, about 10% of you.
Oh, thank you.
3% of Frank Burns, and 2% of my ex-husband. 1% of my ex-husband.
That's only 44%, Margaret. Where's the other 56%?
They need better bookkeeping there when the writers are writing these things.
Right?
Somebody with math experience would have been helpful.
Get an abacus, for God's sake. Just something. Moving on. Next is Yes Sir, That's Our Baby, written by Jim Mulligan, directed by Alan Alda. This was the final episode to air in the 1970s. It aired on New Year's Eve, 1979. Only one main storyline, an attempt to send an Amerasian baby to the States. It's a serious subject, something that really happened. American soldiers were fathering babies, and these babies were left behind, and they were ostracized from society.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's a frustrating episode, too, because of all the flippin' red tape cut through to get this baby home.
We fill out this DF form. We buck it all the way to MacArthur. Would that get her out of Korea?
Not a chance. Major, why is this so tough? All we want, somehow, is to send a baby to the States. How do we do that?
How about parcel post?
Very funny.
Look, Captain, when you first got here, I explained to you that this is covered under Korean civil law. This is not an army matter.
Not an army matter, you jackass. Where do you think that child came from? You got people in American soldier suits running around out there making babies and then making tracks. Don't you think it's about time it became an army matter?
Captain, there is a war going on out there. We cannot be responsible for what happens when a soldier gets lonely. Why the hell are you two so steamed up over some kid anyway? One of you guys the, daddy?
Oh, it's a good thing for you we're doctors, because I'm going to break every bone in your body.
Francis, our friend, says, yes, sir, that's our baby. A great example of how hard the bureaucracy associated with war makes it to do a simple act of kindness. In this way, it's a good companion episode to The Incubator, as well as to Kim, for obvious reasons.
And Emily says, I remember watching Yes Sir as a child, the complexities of trying to rescue her, and in the end, the best choice was walking away and hoping she'd be okay, and they'd never know. I thought about that so much, suddenly understanding in a grown-up way that things aren't simple.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Preach.
Yeah.
All right. Bottle Fatigue is next up on season 8. This was written by Thad Mumford and Dan Wilcox and directed by Burt Metcalf. Guest star Shelley Long. And this episode is important to us because this is the episode that was featured in the table read episode of MASH Matters. That was episode 56. And then we had the pleasure of not only playing that audio that was provided to us by Michael Hirsch, but then talking to Dan Wilcox afterwards. And Dan Wilcox we lost in 2024.
Yeah.
This episode has deeper meaning to me now than it ever had because of this connection to it.
Yeah.
Since the veil of alcohol has been lifted from my brain, I've discovered a whole new world out there, and you have no idea how disgusting it is.
Look, Captain, I understand what you're going through. It's admirable. It's noble. It's an inspiration to us all. But I think I speak for the entire congregation when I say, shut up!
Oh, is that so?
Yes, that's so. We've had it up to here with your teetotaling tantrum.
Oh, I get it. You want me to start drinking again, don't you?
That's not what I said.
Oh, that's what you want.
Oh, Hawk, don't be paranoid.
You'd like that, wouldn't you? The old Dr. Pierce from South Korea. He was all the rage with that cute little wobble in his walk, not to mention his rosy cheeks with eyes to match. That's what you want, isn't it, Margaret?
If everything's so damn clear to you, Mr. Keen Senses, how come you haven't noticed that I'm the one who's been defending you? That is, up till now.
Karen says, Bottle Fatigue. It had comedy, it had drama. The actors did a great job of bringing the fear of the bomb going off like you would expect nurses and doctors to act. Scared and worried, but not petrified.
Yeah. Just an all-around good episode.
Yep, very.
And if you have not listened to the table read episode, or if you haven't heard it in a while, go back and listen. Episode 56, mashmatters.com. All right, moving along. Heal Thyself is the next episode of season 8. Story by Dennis Koenig and Gene Reynolds. Teleplay by Dennis Koenig and directed by Mike Farrell. This guest starred the magnificent Edward Herrmann. This might be my favorite guest appearance by anybody. Edward Herrmann coming in and taking over as the surgeon when Winchester and Potter go down with the mumps. Just an incredible performance. I watch it in awe every time. He's just so good.
Doctor, your opportune arrival calls for a celebration.
You make your own? Yeah, we call it moonshine over Korea.
Oh, now I know what the corporal is spraying the office with. This is quite a lovely spot you have here.
Oh, it's not much, but we like to call it hell.
Hey, we just came for a weekend. Now we may never leave.
You're probably here on the American plan.
Now see here, Newsom, that remark shows a complete lack of respect for this man's army and all that it stands for, and I resent the fact that you beat me to it.
So do I. Where are you stationed? HQ Company, Tokyo.
Ah, Tokyo. Hotbed of combat.
Working your fingers down to the manicure.
Yeah, it's a cushy job, but somebody's got to do it. I specialize in geisha girls myself. I am a highly regarded eye, ear, and leg man.
Hey, Hawk, I think we got a new guy for the act.
Yeah, we could put a sign out in front of OR. 3 Stooges, no waiting.
Attention, people. Choppers. Don't think it's presents from home.
Let's go, Steve. It's another come-as-you-heard party.
You don't give a fella much of a chance to freshen up, do you?
Sorry, happy minute just ended.
Mark says, season 8 was superb. Picking just one highlight would be impossible. However, if pressed to name a favorite episode, I would have to go with Heal Thyself. The idea of being quarantined with someone you have nothing in common with usually makes for an interesting story, and MASH perfectly sticks Colonel Potter and Winchester together. We know the two men respect one another, but we also get the frustration between their wildly different tastes in music and their different temperaments. The main story about Dr. Steve Newsom filling in is great. He's witty and clever and a nice addition to the swamp, a character they could have easily had fit into the 407th permanently, in my opinion. I agree. His surgical skills are more than up to the task, and his stories of combat surgery in the Pusan perimeter are the first hint that he's carrying more than just memories of those horrors. His quick descent into sleepwalking and staring off into space foreshadow his eventual running and hiding from the horrors that they face every day. And the tag where Colonel Potter and Winchester finally have found peaceful way to cohabitate only to be interrupted by Klinger arriving is a perfect way to end the episode. Bonus, Sidney Freeman is mentioned even if we don't get to see him.
Mike says, heal thyself, seeing the impact of the war on even the strongest of people. I show this episode when I teach the novel The Things They Carried, specifically the story Speaking of Courage.
And BJ says, Edward Herrmann's performance of Newsom's brittle psyche in Heal Thyself was phenomenal. His transformation from a breezy and easygoing doctor to a catatonic, broken surgeon was seamless. The level of stress in the OR session that Newsom ducked out of was palpable. I felt the panic from Hawkeye and BJ as they were helplessly overwhelmed with wounded. A powerful story from great writers.
Pierce, Honeycutt, you're looking for your missing surgeon. He's in here.
All right, Newsom, what happened?
Easy, Pierce. He just wandered in and sat down.
Steve, it's Hawkeye.
The blood won't come off. No matter what I do, it just stays there.
Just take it easy.
See what I mean? Look at that. Never gonna go away. No matter how hard I scrub or how much I wash, it's gonna stay there. Where do they come from? What do they expect me to do? I can't.
And that brings us to Old Soldiers, written by Dennis Koenig and directed by Charles Dubin. What can you say about this episode?
Well, Scott says, I'll have to go with Old Soldiers. I love the scenes with Colonel Potter, especially when the young boy comes while he is listening to old music on the phonograph. Although the boy probably doesn't understand a word Potter is saying, you can see the gleam in his eye as Potter talks to him and tells him he has his whole life ahead of him. The tontine scene at the end is also one of the most tear-jerking scenes of the entire series. Included is one of my favorite Potterisms. Even the roosters are comatose.
Yep. Life is a kind of a now you see it, now you don't proposition. It was all in front of me then, though. Like it is now for you. You're off to a kind of a rough start, but I bet you've got some glorious times ahead of you. I just pray to God they stop this war and forget how to make any more of them.
Jen says there are so many great episodes in this season, it's hard to pick just one. However, I'll have to go with Old Soldiers. Harry Morgan's acting is beautiful and moving. And of course, there's the tontine scene. It's poignant because too few of us ever think to tell our friends just how much we value and appreciate them.
And Corey says, Old Soldiers, our cherished friends of our youth and our cherished friends of our present. We can all relate. A beautiful, touching masterpiece and perhaps Harry Morgan's finest scene in all of the MASH episodes. It never gets old.
And Anne says, Old Soldiers is probably my favorite because it speaks to the reality of war. Potter faces the reality that he is the only one left from his buddies of World War I. He's in a bad mood, but he is dealing with the grief of losing a friend and his own mortality. I like this episode because PTSD wasn't really talked about in World War II, Korea, or Vietnam as much as it is today. Potter went through hell with his buddies in World War I, and now he's in a new war zone sharing his past with his current staff. I just like the connection of the two parts of Potter's life. Yeah, the speech from Potter is perfectly written and perfectly acted. One of the most touching moments of the entire series. This also was one of the episodes that was featured in Michael Hirsch's documentary, Making MASH. He was on the set when they were filming this scene.
Yep.
If you'll notice, though, at the very end, when they all toast, Winchester's glass misses everybody's.
Yeah. I mean, what can you say? Like you've said it all, and they've said it all. It's one of the most brilliant things you've seen on television. It really was.
Here's to you, boys. To Ryan, who died in WW1, the war to end all wars. To Gianelli, who died in the war after that. To Stein, the joker of the crowd. And to Grusky, my best friend, who just passed away in Tokyo. You were the friends of my youth, my comrades through thick and thin, and everything in between. I drink to your memories. I loved you, fellas. One and all.
Next up is Morale Victory, written by John Rappaport, directed by Charlie Dubin. John Rappaport talked about this episode at length in our interview with him in episode 10, so you can go back and re-listen to that. We see Charles' humanity with Private Sheridan, as Private Sheridan has lost the use of his hand, and yet he is a concert pianist. And we see how much that weighs on Winchester.
9 times out of 10, with a wound like that, the leg would be lost. But you caught me on a good day. You won't be doing Lindy overnight, but with proper care, that leg will be 100%.
Why is there a bandage on my hand? What's wrong with it?
When you consider the boys come through here every day and lose their sight, limbs, even their lives.
What happened to my hand?
Well, you have some nerve and tendon damage. Fortunately, there will be only slightly diminished use of 3 fingers. It will look perfectly normal.
What do you mean slightly diminished?
There will be a certain loss of dexterity.
For how long?
Afraid it'll be permanent.
Oh my God.
But your leg will be fine.
I don't care about my leg.
I don't understand.
My legs are nothing. These are my life. I play the piano. A concert pianist.
The music that is played in the episode is Piano Concerto for the Left Hand in D major, composed by Ravel. And there's an audio recording of Paul Wittgenstein, who commissioned this work, performing the piece. You can hear him playing it. And I'll put a link in the show notes to that. I'm also going to put a link. Klinger mentions he was able to track down a new movie called The Terror of Tiny Town. It is a Western with a cast of little people. Yeah. It's a real movie.
Yep.
It came out in 1938, and you can watch the entire thing, although I don't know that you will want to, on YouTube. I will put a link to that as well.
It's a soul-stirring drama, a searing saga of the sagebrush, and it's called The Terror of Tiny Town. But I must caution you not to take it too seriously. This picture
Hey, mister, come down here. I want to talk to you.
Pardon me. You mean it is serious?
Sure, it's serious. I'm the hero. After this picture's out, I'll be the biggest cowboy star in Hollywood.
Wait a minute.
Who are you?
And of course, one of the most touching moments in the entire episode, when you have this food server, Igor, who freaks out and complains that everyone is yelling at him because he serves the crummy food, but he doesn't even cook it.
Oh, yeah.
And he's telling everyone that the cook is eating dinner at Rosie's. I mean, ladies and gentlemen.
There's one a morale problem. What about mine? The food in this place is disgusting, right? Well, I don't cook it, right? Right. But who has to stand over this slop every day and listen to everybody's gripes and dumb jokes about it? Me! Well, I've had it. You don't like the swill here? Talk to the cook.
Where's the cook?
Eating at Rosie's.
Kill the cook. Kill.
It was really nice to see Igor's humanity in that moment as well.
It was.
It was touching.
You could compare this to Colonel Potter's scene with the tontine, but I don't know. I would. But maybe
you could compare
else.
it. You certainly could compare it. All right, listeners, Blue Apple Flying Sauce from Instagram says, morale victory, Winchester's finest moment. The look on his face when Private Sheridan begins to play gets me every time.
And Arthur Healy, good friend Arthur Healy, says, morale victory is one of my top 10 episodes. When Charles finds the words to help his patient, he grew so much. He can play the notes, but he can't play the music. We all have a gift we can sing with, and Charles' speech is so uplifting to me. I feel better about myself after watching it.
And Rao Mentan, I have no idea if I pronounced your name right. I'm so sorry. In Australia, says, morale victory. It's my favorite Winchester episode, seeing the lengths he will go to help Private Sheridan gain confidence to play the piano again after losing dexterity in his right hand. It's probably the first time we see Winchester showing compassion towards a patient and using his love of music to help someone. I also love the other plot of Hawkeye and BJ being made morale officers by Colonel Potter after one too many complaints and enlisting the help of Klinger to get live crabs for the cookout. It's one of the few MASH episodes that makes us hungry. Every time we watch this episode, my mother and I start craving crabs. Lastly, Igor's rant about constantly hearing about the camp complaining about the food he served was the best part of the episode.
Ding, 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 ding. Ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case.
The comments of the day right there.
I had a great time doing that. As a matter of fact, it was the first time I had an ability to kind of explode in the camp and do it as well as I wanted to do it. There was one little tiny part that I did. I sort of threw something in there and they cut that out, but that's okay.
Oh, really?
I knew that it probably would go and it not hurt anything, not hurt the scene, and I wouldn't be fired. And they did, and everybody was cool with it.
Next up is Linda Hand, story by Alan Alda and Burt Metcalf, teleplay by Alan Alda, Jim Mulligan, and John Rappaport, Thad Mumford, and Den Wilcox. Everybody.
Gee,
man,
a lot of people had to write that one. Wow.
And this is an Alda family reunion. We see the return of Alan's father, Robert, as Dr. Borelli, and Alan's half-brother, Anthony, plays Corporal Jarvis, the medic at the aid station. We had one comment come in for Linda Hand. That's from Jim. And Jim says, this is the second worst episode in the entire show.
Oh, my goodness.
There you go. There you go, Jim.
Well,
thank you for your input.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Hey, what are you so touchy about?
I like my anesthetist to keep his finger on the patient's pulse and his nose out of my operation.
Now, whatever you say. You always scrub like that?
Scrub like what?
You know, like that.
No, I used to send my hands out to the laundry, but they always came back with too much starch. What's wrong with how I scrub?
Well, you're starting with your palms.
What am I supposed to start with, my feet?
You should always start with your fingertips and work your way carefully
really?
up the
You
elbow.
are insane!
No, I'm not.
Hey, now look. I realize you're doctors and I'm only a medic. I don't know if you've met many of us, but we spend a lot of time dragging guys off the line while people are shooting at us. We get sort of protective about those guys. We worry about them and we fight for them like they were our children or our brothers or something. And that's guys we don't even know. Captain Kramer here's my battalion aid surgeon. I've worked under him for 8 months, day and night. He may be just another patient to you, but he's damn special to me. Understand that?
Yeah, we understand. We'll do the best job we can on him, I promise you.
Fine.
You ready, Doctor?
Whatever you are, Doctor.
I can take or leave this episode. It's not one of my favorites. I find the character of Borelli to be a little overbearing, which he's supposed to be, but, whatever. One little plot line. Hawkeye thwarts this plan for his fake birthday party by claiming it's BJ's wedding anniversary. But in the next season, Margaret, Potter, and Father Mulcahy are going to celebrate BJ's anniversary in the episode Oh How We Danced. Why don't they question it?
Yeah, right.
They know.
Well, it's the second worst episode in the entire show.
Yeah. I wonder what he thinks the first worst episode.
Ooh, yeah. All right.
I have a feeling it might be coming up in just a few minutes.
Probably.
Next is Goodbye Cruel World, written by Thad Mumford and Dan Wilcox, directed by Charlie Dubin. Guest star Clyde Kasatsu portrays Sergeant Michael Yee. This is the third of 4 appearances on MASH. He played an Officers Club barkeeper in Season 2's Officer Only and Henry in Love, and he also returns as BJ's buddy, Captain Yamamoto, in Season 11's The Joker is Wild. And we see Alan Arbus return as Sidney Freeman.
Pierce, I'm glad you're here. Sergeant Yee's been asking for you all morning.
Yeah, Doc, you gotta get me out of here. My unit's moving up again.
What's your hurry? We just did a major repair job on your leg. You don't want to run off while you're still under warranty.
Come on, Doc. You gotta get me back on the line.
The only fighting you're going to be doing is for a window seat on the plane home.
Home?
Yeah, you remember, where the buffalo roam? Where taps are those little things Shirley Temple wears on her shoes?
Home? Oh, I gotta let that sink in.
Well, let it sink. You're on your way.
Betty says, due to an error in Hulu, there were exactly 3 episodes of MASH I accidentally skipped while watching the full series for the first time in what took me about 11 years. Dreams, War Correspondent, and finally Goodbye Cruel World. After watching every other episode, Goodbye Cruel World was the last remaining episode for me, and I just watched it the other night as a pick-me-up. For that reason, it will always hold a special place in my heart, and it is the most I've ever resonated with Klinger. I thought it was so beautiful what he did with The Office, and I was saddened by the reactions of the rest of the gang. Maybe it was important to see such thoughtful characters have relatively immature reactions. Also, any episode with Sidney is automatically a fantastic episode, and I was so pleasantly surprised to see him. Of course, it would have been nicer under better circumstances. The final shot of Klinger and Potter, illuminated by the soft light of Klinger's remaining lamp, was a wonderful moment for the two of them to share. I would say it was a fine episode to have as my own personal finale, and the humanity and hopeful melancholy was ever so present, exactly what I love about MASH.
In all his 10 years in the service, this is the first time he's ever fought an Asian enemy. He's been looking through a gun-sight at people who could be members of his own family.
No wonder he felt guilty. To be like my declaring war on Crabapple Cove.
Exactly. Only in his case, it's worse. He has to kill Chinese to be a good American, then he has to kill himself to be a good Chinese.
A man without 2 countries.
And we get to hear Klinger's imitation of Potter.
Come in. Tea. Potter.
And Radar.
Oh, golly whiz, yes, 1,000,000 times, your colonelness.
Yes.
Oh, boy. And then it brings us to Dreams. Story by Alan Alda and James J. Rubenfeiner. Teleplay by Alan Alda, directed by Alan Alda. He received a Primetime Emmy Award nomination for directing this episode. It also received a Humanitas Prize for this episode, and I know that because I have one of those prizes on my shelf back here. I own Thad Mumford's Humanitas Prize for Dreams. We discussed this episode at length in episode 86 with Mike Farrell and Catherine Bergstrom, who played Peg Honeycutt, and Rick Wallen, who played Lieutenant Garvey. If you want to do a deep dive on Dreams, go back and listen to episode 86.
Yeah.
This, of course, one of the most divisive episodes of the entire series.
Moo. Come on, it's just a temporary spasm.
They take a temporary hike.
Sure. Wish a guy around. Boy, if I could make a fist, I'd be shaking in the air right now.
Have yourself a nice long rest and be back here in 12 minutes.
Hi. Come here often? Band's not great, but some of these kids can really cut a rug. Good night, Peg.
Charlotte says Dreams is a masterpiece of literature formed and condensed into a single episode of television. Wow, we got to send that to Alan. Through the dreams of each of the characters, the viewer fully appreciates the hopes and fears that drive the character. Similarities in characters' dreams suggest hidden links between characters. Potter and Klinger dream of home. BJ and Margaret dream of marriages that are interrupted by the war. The dreams of Charles and Hawkeye highlight their sense of futility in the face of the suffering around them, that no matter how good a surgeon is, they can't save everyone. Only Father Mulcahy's dream is without parallel to anyone else in the cast. His nightmare is the struggle with his own ambition. And I could write about this at great length, citing other episodes that support my reading of this one, that this episode holds the key to deeply understanding each of the characters. It's one of those episodes that elevates the entire show from mere entertainment to profound reflection on life.
Now then, Dr. Pierce, how do you reattach a limb?
I'm sorry, I was sleeping. Did we cover that?
Your left arm, please. Twist it. Pull. May I have it? This young man wants his arm back. Do you know the procedure?
I was sleeping. I don't know.
Rebecca says Dreams is probably the most polarizing episode of the entire run of the show. I have to give it the top prize for season 8 because there are images from it that will simply never leave my brain. They were burned into my mind as a child. It's a departure for a comedy, but MASH was never just a comedy. Dreams only really hints at the reality of how terrible war is, but it is unforgettable. I know what you're talking about, Rebecca, because when I was a kid and I saw the image of Hawkeye in the rowboat going through the pond filled with the mannequin arms and legs, really left its mark in a major way. This episode, I know a lot of people don't like it. I think it is absolutely brilliant. There's one moment in this episode where Father Mulcahy is talking to a young soldier who is confessing, and he can't keep his eyes open during the confession. You really have to pay attention. If you have not really watched this episode in a long time, go watch it just for this scene alone. As Mulcahy is losing consciousness, the lines that are being delivered by the soldier turn to gibberish. It is so well done. And it's really fun to watch it with the subtitles on because they write out the gibberish.
Oh. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 6 months since my last confession. Since that time, I've committed 3 sins against the 6th commandment. The first occasion was a bar in Seoul in which I drove Sobert and Folly Quince to civil our philameries with Closive and Filchus and the Pictionary Farben. And then, about a month later, we've been up on the line for 28 days, and everybody was real fatigued. We all wanted to go out and just try to forget, you know. So, of course, we started drinking, and then I sorg and staven intusively thurgis, and frawl with Segulary Perchel. But Franges are Gerbil, you know, Iski Perobic Tondo with Magic Garolans.
You know, just as a side comment here, I think that we're going to pass along a couple of these comments to Alan Alda, who wrote this. So because I think it's worth it. I think he'll enjoy it and get a big kick out of it.
Absolutely. Just don't tell him, Linda Hand, don't tell him that Jim thinks that episode is the second worst in the entire show. Maybe leave that one out.
We'll skip that part.
Well, it's been a miserable, grueling, rotten couple of days.
A little shut-eye would go down great right about now.
You can say that again. Even my teeth are dozing off.
Compared to the way I feel, Rip Van Winkle was an insomniac.
Well, good night, folks. If you need me, I'll be unconscious.
To sleep. A chance to dream.
On the other hand, maybe I'll have another cup of coffee.
Good idea.
Help keep us warm.
I'll pour.
Got it. Yep.
All right, we're in the home stretch now. War Correspondent is the next one. Is written and directed by Mike Farrell. This is the second cast member after Alan Alda to both write and direct an episode of MASH. And it guest stars my childhood crush.
Oh.
Susan St. James.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Aggie O'Shea. She just is, she just, I can't even form words to describe.
What? Please get all the children out of the room before he starts.
When she's on, there's something, I mean, it's just, yeah.
You devil. You probably bribed them to leave. You think you can have your way with me? Well, you can, unless, of course, you'd prefer my way.
You're crazy.
Thank you. I thought you'd never notice. So, now that you've seen our world-famous mess tent, what can I show you next?
Margaret's tent. I think I better get some sleep.
That noise you just heard was my crest falling. But no matter, I hereby appoint myself as your personal man Tuesday.
I always thought it was Friday.
I don't think I can wait that long.
Try.
Listen, if there's anything you need, want, or desire, especially desire, you have but to ask.
Really? Oh, there is something that I'm kind of curious about.
What? If I don't know the answer, I'll make one up.
Is BJ always so quiet?
BJ who?
Kudos to Mike Farrell. Not only did he direct it, but he wrote this episode. So he wrote the episode where he gets to be smitten with Susan St. James. I salute you, sir. Well done. Well done.
Boy, I think she had a few people with crushes on her, didn't she?
Oh, my goodness.
Well, Brad says, War Correspondent is one of my favorites from the season. I liked how the writers had Susan St. James as a war correspondent and an artist. And as an artist myself, I can relate in that regard. This is a BJ episode, and that's another reason I like it. The gal went for BJ instead of Hawkeye.
It's because BJ wrote it.
Yeah. And usually nobody cares about the writers, but this one was different.
He knew what he was doing. He was very smart. Yeah. Very smart.
I like the way you are with the boys in post-op.
Thank you.
There's a certain gentleness about you in the midst of all this craziness that's very attractive. And may I be direct?
Please. I hate the way you beat around the bush.
Well, you haven't said or done anything that could be remotely considered a pass in spite of all the openings I've given you. I don't know whether to be flattered or insulted.
I feel like I'm about 3 feet over my head.
Oh, just relax and float.
Hey, you're really something.
Oh, let's not lose control.
Oh, you want direct?
Yeah.
You are one of the most... You're an extraordinarily attractive woman, but...
Hold it right there. Back up one. Go over that first part again. Up to the butt.
You're an extraordinarily attractive woman.
Thank you. As for the second part, I think I know what butt means, so I'll quit while I'm ahead. Now, I'd like to leave you with 2 very important thoughts. I'm going to be here for another 48 hours, and the feeling is very, very mutual. Sleep well.
The penultimate episode for Season 8 is Backpay, written by Thad Mumford and Dan Wilcox and Dennis Koenig, directed by Burt Metcalf, guest starring Richard Hurd as Captain Snyder, who probably best known as Wilhelm on Seinfeld. We also see Shab Shimono returning for his second and final appearance on MASH. He first appeared in Season 7's Dear Comrade as Winchester's houseboy and the communist spy, Quang. This was also Jerry Fujikawa's 6th of 7 guest appearances. In this episode, he appears as one of the 3 Korean doctors who cured Winchester's back with acupuncture, but he also appeared in The Chosen People, Officer of the Day, Rally Around the Flag Boys, The Birthday Girls, and most notably as Whiplash Wang in Deal Me Out, and as Dr. Pack, the sleazy marriage broker in Love and Marriage.
You see, these little fellers here tell me they've got a surefire remedy for that bad back.
Surely you jest.
Look at me, Winchester. You see any teeth?
Sir, as a man of medicine, you can't suggest that I subject my body to the ministrations of these snake charmers.
Quit your belly aching. I've checked this out with our own people down at Seoul. They're familiar with it. They guarantee you it's not going to do you any harm.
Major, this treatment is 3,000 years old.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. We would not offer it unless we knew it would help.
Let me be succinct. Not on your life.
Let me be succincter. We're going to be getting in some genuine casualties, PDQ. Without you, we might just lose a few of them. Now it's your responsibility to try everything you can to get those vertebrae vertical. What do you say, Doctor?
I say, okie dokie.
Now you're talking my language.
Nobody likes this episode.
Nobody showed up, huh?
Nobody said that they liked this episode.
Yeah,
it's not that you don't like. We ask people what's their favorite episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not that people don't like this episode. I like this episode, but nobody picked this as their favorite.
Well, all of the MASH episodes had something that you could like.
Yes.
But not all of them were just, so fantastic. We have to go, oh my God, this is the best I've never seen. Not all of the episodes were like that, but all of them had some moment that were certainly entertaining.
Yes, except Nurse Doctor.
And Backpay.
Sorry, did
Those
I say
two.
that?
Pierce, you can't send a bill to the U.S. Army.
Why not? It's all the rage in Minneapolis.
Captain, this is not Minneapolis. This is Korea. And this bill of yours could be easily construed as an attempt to defraud the U.S. government.
Fraud? Captain Snyder, I'm aghast. Every one of those charges is verified. You're holding a documented doctor document.
Pierce, be reasonable.
My prices are very reasonable. The going rate for an X-ray is $5. I'm only charging $4 because of my low overhead. Of course, during a shelling, I have no overhead.
Pierce, can't you stow these monkey shines a mite? This is a criminal investigation.
Actually, Colonel, your captain has nothing to be afraid of. I can see that this is not an attempt at fraud. It's just a case of hot-headed, self-righteous nonsense.
Don't try to sweet-talk me. What are you going to do about my bill?
That's easy.
Maybe I haven't made myself clear to you, Captain. There are doctors back in the States making a killing on this war.
It's a free country.
No, it's $5 an X-ray. You haven't seen the last of this bill.
Well, you just keep sending it in because you'll never collect. I'll see to that personally. Colonel, I think we've taken care of everything.
Yeah. Everything except my queasy gizzard.
That brings us to the final episode of Season 8, April Fools, written by Dennis Koenig and directed by Charles Dubin, guest starring the great Pat Hingle as Colonel Daniel Webster Tucker. Pat Hingle himself actually served on the destroyer USS Marshall during World War II and then returned to serve during the Korean Army as a boilerman technician in the Navy.
Wow.
Yeah. He is so good in this episode, and he is so evil in this episode. I remember the first time I watched this episode, I truly did not know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Get this, I'm going to shape this place up, and I can't think of a better way to start than barring all of you from medical service.
Oh, golly gee, boys and girls, are we in Dutch?
The Colonel is going to make us stand in a corner of Korea.
And go to bed without supper.
For which, Colonel, I shall be eternally grateful.
Yeah.
You people think you're very funny, don't you? Well, I've had it with you screwballs. As of right now, you're all on report for gross insubordination, conduct unbecoming officers, and anything else I can think of.
I can't believe that.
You better believe it, Major. If I have my way, you'll all be court-martialed. And since I'm the man who makes those decisions, I always get my way. Let me see you laugh that one off, gang.
You can see a deep dive on this script for this episode with our friend, the MASH historian. I'll put the link to that in our show notes. But before we get to the listener comments, what really makes this episode stand out, it has a veritable smorgasbord of Potterisms. Bourgeois, holy hemostat, what in the name of Marco Blessed Polo is going on here? Peck of pips, you look like a furry Claudette Colbert. That's how he says it. And didn't stand a snowball's chance in Guam. Just a few of the Potterisms in this final episode of the season.
Karen says, I loved April Fool's. It was a masterful plan. Everyone was fooled and momentarily shocked by the collapse of Potter's conspirator. It was brilliant. When they realized they'd been had, they were good sports. I can still hear Potter and his friend gleefully laughing when they knew their prank was successful.
Monica says, April Fool's is in my top 3 of all MASH episodes. The way Potter and Tucker goad the medical staff until they crack and then reveal that they set them up the whole time is brilliant. And this episode has my absolute favorite Potterism.
Good grief, Margaret. Where in the name of Carrie's corset is your tent?
That's great. And our friend Isabella writes, Dreams and April Fool's. Both episodes are a perfect balance between real-life war and comedy that the show presented. April Fool's is also my birthday, no lie. So having an episode for my special day means more. Aw, there you go.
Come on, man, hang in there.
Yes. He's saying something.
Pierce.
He's asking for you.
Pierce.
What is it? I can't hear you.
Is that you, Pierce?
Yeah, what is it?
Just one thing. April Fool.
What?
I got you, Pierce. Oh, you April Fools. Got you. I even got that Harry Tufu. If he thinks he's got his Section 8, he's really crazy. You were marvelous, Dan. A regular Lionel Barrymore. I love that line. What do you want, a medal?
Just like shooting fish in and out. Hey, you want to step outside? What's on it to work?
You mean the whole? We set this up weeks ago. I knew if Dan pushed you hard enough, you'd pull a stupid trick like this. You went for it like a holy harp. I feel the perfect fool.
Fellow jokers, we are in the presence of greatness. We have been royally had.
And that is season 8.
Whew, wow. A lot of episodes there.
A lot of episodes, and like we said, a lot of words. And we're thankful for everybody who sent in their comments and shared their thoughts and feelings about their favorite episodes from this season. And typically now at the end of the season recaps, we talk about our favorite episodes.
Oh, gosh, I got to run. Thanks.
No,
Look
get
at
back
the
here.
time.
Get back
I
here.
gotta
Get
read
back
that.
here.
My agent is on the phone. Oh, sorry.
So, Jeff, do you have any standout episodes from this season?
Okay, here's my true, honest opinion about that. I think all of them have moments in them that are terrific and special. I make a joke and say all the ones I was in, I love, and I think are my favorites, and that's true. I love moments. I don't necessarily have an episode that I like. Mm-hmm. So as I said, Mako, I thought did a superb job doing that character that was tough to do. Mm-hmm. It was a difficult one and a difficult subject, but he did it brilliantly. And there are a lot of things over, and certainly Dreams has moments in it that are just spectacular, which I loved. Mm-hmm. So honestly, for me, I don't have a episode that I like. I like all the moments in them over the 11 years that the show was on. But the favorites were the ones I was in.
You are consistent.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest, folks. I mean, if you were in a match, wouldn't you say, hey, that's my favorite, the one I was in. Give me a break.
Well, yeah, obviously, yes. Unless it was Nurse Doctor, then I wouldn't like it. All right. My top 3 from this season. This was really tough because there were some moments, like you said, there are moments in this season that really stand out. Like Edward Herman stands out. However, I did not choose that episode. So my top 3 episodes, I'm going to say Morale Victory, Winchester helping the injured pianist. Mm-hmm. Dreams, I'm putting it on the list. I know it's going to tick some people off, but I think it is a masterpiece. If you have not watched it in a long time and you think you didn't like it, I really encourage you to go watch it again because it might grow on you. And my top pick, because of the tontine scene, Old Soldiers. Mm-hmm. A wonderful, wonderful episode. Harry Morgan's shining moment. Mm-hmm. He has a lot of great moments in MASH, but I don't think anything tops his final speech in Old Soldiers.
Yep. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, boy, it's very difficult. This was a very impressive television show.
Yeah.
And it gave us all a lot of stuff to think about and to see and to be entertained by. But boy, did they all do a great job.
Boy, they did.
Darn good job. Fine work, everybody.
And hey, we did a pretty darn good job of getting through season 8 on our first episode back.
Well, no kidding. And my voice is kind of weird, having a little trouble with my vocal cords. So forgive me, anybody who I talk like that.
I'm still dealing with an infected
everything.
Yeah, I infected everything. So, hey, it is what it is. But we powered through and we're back.
Darn right.
I'll tell you, we stopped putting out the episode, but the questions and comments did not stop coming in. We have a huge backlog of listener comments and questions, and we'll be tackling those in upcoming episodes. And, hopefully talking to some fun people involved with the show and, all the stuff that you love. We're back and we're ready to do it.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Here's to the new year. May she be a damn sight better than last year. And may we all have more podcast episodes when she's done. Until next time, here's looking up your old address.
There's no one singing war songs now like people used to do. No over there, no praise the Lord, no glory hallelujah. Perhaps at last we've asked ourselves what we should have asked before. With the pain and death this madness brings, what were we ever singing for?
Amen.